What's the strangest thing you've caught someone doing in the workplace? I used to work in retail and I did a rotational evening shift with this weird dude. He was about 50-ish, fairly mild-mannered, didn't make too much fuss, friendly, etc. One day I didn't clock in until 20 minutes after I was supposed to start due to a car accident blocking my route to work. Normally I would greet him at the warehouse door as he has to let me in, but he must have assumed I wasn't coming. I spotted him in the dark corner by the generator with a small spotlight on the shelf behind him. He had a pile of broken stuff returned by customers and was looking over it. I pressed the doorbell and he hurriedly put it all away and came jogging over. I asked him about it and he denied it at first, but I said I saw it and he relented. He liked to fix things and take them home. Some he gave away to charity, some he gave to his grandkids, and some he gave to his wife. The dude was prolific. He had a hidden compartment in a shelf and padlocked it. It was behind a panel in the internal wall behind the generator. For about an hour, I watched him take apart an electronic 9-volt drill, find the fault, and put it all back together again. From that moment on, neither of us did much work in the warehouse. To be fair, he confessed that he enjoyed the night shifts because all the day shift had done most of the work. He would spend the first hour or so tidying up and finishing off the day shift's job, and then he would go out of sight of the CCTV cameras and just fix things because he loved doing it. Occasionally, one of us would do a lap to show the cameras we were working. Our job was to cross-check and catalog what the day shift had moved out of the warehouse against what was sold, so they could always maximize warehouse space. It was dull, but boring, easy work. I hope that dude is okay, and I do think about him from time to time. Well, to me, that guy sounds pretty awesome, even if he was a little bit strange. Seems like he really enjoyed fixing things, and that was a perfect job for him to engage in his passion, right? Story 2. Not sure if this counts, but in my old office, the windows along one side of the building overlooked a block of apartments. We often saw people hanging out on their balconies, drinking coffee or putting their laundry out or whatever. Then there was a fateful day we all downed tools and went to stand at the window en masse, staring open-mouthed at the couple having lengthy intimacy in a variety of positions right on the balcony opposite. Even our boss was only making the most half-hearted of motions to get us to go and get back to work. That was an interesting day. Story 3. This didn't happen to me but to my colleague. The bathroom of our workplace was structured like an actual home bathroom. At a bowl along with a sink with a mirror over it, and dividing the room was a curtain which contained the shower area but was simply used as a storage area for cleaning supplies. Usually the curtain was pulled all the way to the end so all the cleaning materials wouldn't be in clear view when you entered the room. So one time my colleague did her deed, and when she was done, she flushed the toilet and proceeded to the sink to wash her hands. But when she looked in the mirror, she was horrified when she saw someone else's reflection from behind the curtain. It was our workplace's new cleaning lady. Turns out the cleaning lady was hiding behind the curtain since she was texting on her phone, but she didn't leave when she heard someone enter and probably hoped no one noticed she was there. Because of this, I made it a habit to check if there's someone hiding behind the curtains before I use the bathroom. Story 4. Not the strangest thing so much as the strangest person. He's like Dwight Schrute. Let's call him Mark. Mark wears shorts to work with sandals and socks every day. They're always the same. He also wears the same raggedy, hole-filled t-shirt. Mark has a quote-unquote file on everyone he works with. This is a well-known fact, and he will openly admit he has files on everyone. Mark regularly brings drinks in that look like alcohol. They aren't alcohol. He's just waiting for someone, unsuspecting, to accuse him of bringing in alcohol so he can report them for bullying. Mark has reported 10 people I know of for bullying. No action has been taken against any of them. Mark uses the printer almost constantly. I have no idea what he prints, but he prints easily over 100 pages a day and spends his breaks with these sheets and a highlighter. His job gives him very little cause to legitimately use the printer. Mark spends a lot of time in the canteen. If you go in while he is there, you will most likely be cornered and get a lecture about whatever is grinding his gears at that current moment. Mark has an issue with every single initiative the department tries to implement. Mark has the loudest, most obnoxious ringtone I've ever heard. His phone rings about 10 times a day and he takes an exceptionally long time to answer it. Mark's desk is a catastrophe. It honestly looks like a hoarder's house. I have no idea how no one has complained. We work for the government. Mark is essentially immune to being fired. Also, in an old job, one of the bosses was caught giving it to a cashier in a tiny room upstairs. No negative consequences somehow. Story 5. An older homeless man would hide in the church under one of the 1,300 pews just before closing time and spend the night there. He'd get into the communion wine and sleep on a pew cushion even in the midst of my practicing the organ at night. If the sexton came by and tried to rouse him, the guy would yell a resounding "Hail Mary" and go soundly back to sleep. I just let him be. A warm place to sleep on cold winter nights with a men's room near the front door. He did no harm. Story 6. Oh my god. Let me tell y'all about the men's room at the office I work at. I've seen the strangest things in there and continue to see new and stranger things every week. I don't have much time before I need to leave for work actually, so I'll just share one of them for now. This was the first weird thing I saw in the men's room. I came out of the stall and head over to the long row of sinks to wash my hands. Standing at one of the sinks is a mid-20s, light-skinned Latino man in a nice suit. Beside him is a hefty bag full of ice cubes, the small kind like you'd get from an automatic ice vending thingy. And what he's doing is reaching both hands into the bag, coming up with handfuls of ice and holding them under the automatic sensor that turns the sink on. He stands there like this for about 10 seconds while it melts the ice, then repeats the process. He sees me, see him doing this, looks over at me and does work, right? What you gonna do? Kinda shrug and continues on with his appointed work. That's the first weird thing? Like, what are other weird things? Story 7. Someone caught me. I was walking to my car for lunch. I was going to have hot dogs, so I was singing the theme to Cat Dog, an old Nickelodeon cartoon, but with the word hot dogs instead of cat dog, and kind of in the style of a smarmy lounge singer. An older lady I work with got out of her car right as I was passing and asked, "What are you singing?" And my mind went blank. I honestly couldn't think of any way to explain it to her. It's not like she could have or would have watched Cat Dog. I just said, I don't know, got in my car and left. Story 8. When I was working in a butchery, I was cleaning the food display, like the food displays you see in a supermarket, no glass in front of the display. So it took me roughly 2 to 3 hours to clean that son of a witch. When I was finally done and ready to go home, an intoxicated homeless guy waddles inside the store. I think nothing of it and go to the back of the store because unfortunately it wasn't the first time and my supervisor always takes care of the problem, but not this time. This guy bends over to look at some of the meat and just falls over into the food display, face first. But instead of climbing out of the food display, he decides to lay down and just chill. Imagine my surprise when I walk back to the food display to close everything and I see a homeless guy just chilling inside the food display. Had to throw away all the meat and had to clean the whole food display again. Screw my life. Story 9. I did some work experience at a music shop a few years back, and once this woman came in to talk to the owner, it looked like she'd just been out of the hospital, still with her little band on her wrist. She started spouting off a lot of stuff about ending it all and how she'll be gone anyway in a few months. I'm guessing she had cancer. It was a strange thing to see when you're 16. Just as she was about to leave, the owner and his friend walked up to her, put their hands on her head, and started praying in tongues. I just stared in bewilderment. I didn't even know that was still a thing. Story 10. When I was 15, my mom worked for a nursing home and they implemented a new program to print out menus. My mom sucks at computers, so one day she decides I can work there under the table and help with the system. The place used to be a hospital, but when it became a nursing home, the wards were shut down. The closed wards weren't locked very well, so a lot of homeless people would sneak into the closed wards to sleep. When I was working for my mom, I accidentally went into the wrong door and it was a closed ward. It looked like a scene from 28 Days Later. Someone literally just closed the ward and left the equipment, the beds, and even some medical files from the 80s. What was even creepier was that there were clothing in the hallway. Someone was clearly there recently. I noped the heck out of there and went to go find my mom. Story 11. Someone sawing a plank of wood in half while sitting on it? A customer couldn't wait for 2 minutes for me to come and saw a plank down for him, so he put it on 2 trolleys, put a knee on it, and started sawing. Just as I arrived in the aisle, I saw him look up at me in panic as he realized he'd been caught in the act and had seen that he was about to face-plant the floor as the saw broke through. I managed to grab a copy from the CCTV, though I never had the balls to put it on YouTube. The customer was the usual big id, that knew better than these hardware shop assistants, so he ate humble pie for a long, long time. Story 12. At a previous job, we had to let a guy go that just wasn't really capable of keeping up with the workload. He was let go, and one day one of us went into his desk drawers to find something. We discovered a collection of post-it notes where he had drawn, or should I say attempted to draw, little portraits of almost everyone in the office. He wasn't a very good artist, and we all got a good chuckle because it was impossible to tell who almost anyone was without the names he had written at the top of each one. He hadn't done them to be mean. We surmised that he likely just spent a lot of his time he was supposed to be working drawing instead, but looking like he was working. We are talking like there was like 50 to 60 post-it note portraits, and most people kept theirs for a while afterward. It was funny. Story 13. I was sitting next to this guy in an office meeting. He seemed to be taking lots of notes while I looked to see what he was writing. He was drawing on the conference room table. He was writing his nickname in a sort of bad graffiti style. He'd also drawn something that looked like a mushroom cloud explosion. I nudged him and mouthed, "What the heck?" He looked at me like, "What?" Then looked around the room and his face went white. He'd forgotten where he was and his mind, out of boredom I guess, went back to school mode. He was about 20 or something and this was his first office job. He hid the doodle and we volunteered to tidy up the room after the meeting. We used alcohol hand gel to lift the ink but couldn't do anything about the carving effect his penmanship had made. Luckily, no one ever mentioned it, but at another meeting, I saw him draw Jack Skellington on his arm. Story 14. This is both weird and illegal. I caught the head chef at a cafe. My first job, I was 16. taking money out of the till during the quiet pre-breakfast hour. It was just a few coffees and early breakfasts, probably $100 or so. When she realized I was watching her, she asked me not to put the few next orders through the till so our boss would think we sold less than we did. She asked that I do it every day. I never did. The chef didn't like our boss, who was the best boss I have ever had, and I think she was stealing money for a while, trying to send the business under because her friend wanted to buy it. The chef's friend ended up buying it and the place has gone downhill from there. Story 15. Check kiting. So, yeah, kind of boring, but it was the strangest. It was at a small credit union back before electronic clearing of checks was possible. One of the employees frequently made cash deposits and had corresponding check withdrawals coming out of her account. I totaled all her cash deposits for the year so far, I think it was February, and showed her that she deposited more than she and her husband earned in an entire year in just 2 months. I didn't have the authority to fire her, so I reported it up to the CEO, who warned her. She ended up getting fired a couple of years later when a surprise cash count revealed that she'd been borrowing from her cash drawer. Story 16. I've got two, but they're only moderately strange. I work in a massive office wholly owned by one big finance company. One side of our building looks out at an apartment block. I used to work on the 4th floor, which was a perfect height to be able to see into all 3 floors of the apartment block through the windows. Our own windows are tinted on the outside, which means you can't really see if people are looking out or not. It just looks gray-brown. We had a strange ritual where when on a boring conference call or just taking a break, people would hang around a big open area that was an optimal viewing space for the apartments. The goings-on of the residents of that apartment became, over time, an almost soap opera-style narrative shared around the people that worked on the 4th floor. I'd overhear conversations about, "Did you hear about the big fight that the lady on the left second flat had with her boyfriend? I think they broke up." I don't work on the 4th anymore, but I hope it's still going on. There is a lady who works in our post room who is, odd. She's in her late 40s and looks innocuous enough, but several people have caught her doing strange things. My personal example is that very early one morning, I wandered into the ladies' room to find her standing in front of the big mirror, skirt hiked up around her middle, hosiery tights rolled down to her thighs, but garment still in place, seemingly just staring at herself. She made eye contact with me in the mirror when I came in, then looked back at herself. I fled into one of the cubicles, and I sat there with my mind racing about what the heck she was doing. Story 17. Many years ago, I caught someone stealing and hoarding office supplies, staplers, etc. The losing/misplacing of office supplies went on for weeks, and we could not figure out how we kept misplacing everything until once, when he was leaving for vacation, he told me I could go to his desk if I needed anything, a form to fill out or something like that. So while he was on vacation and with his explicit permission, I opened a file drawer and found all of our missing staplers, tape dispensers, etc. I knew it belonged to us because some of it was labeled by us with our own names in our vain attempts to stop misplacing our office supplies. It was almost like he wanted to get caught. I showed it to the supervisor because she had missing supplies too, and nothing happened. I don't even remember if we got our stuff back. Looking back, it was annoying, but now I find it creepy. Story 18. We have a pond outside our office complex. A few of the koi had passed, so we all called the pond guy to come retrieve them. We really had quite bonded with the fish, so we were glad they would no longer be floating around with no dignity. The guy pulls up, and we gather around the windows. We're several stories up to see them off to the fishy netherworld. He hikes up his jeans over his knees, no galoshes, and walks into the middle of the pond. He begins retrieving the fish, but instead of going to the truck, he starts walking the opposite direction. Then he unceremoniously chunks the fish into some bushes. We started screaming and banging on the windows, but it was too late. Birds were on them immediately, and their fishy carcasses were ripped apart before our very eyes. I tell that to then say that the next time he was out, he legit whizzed on a fence in front of 2,000 people in the surrounding office buildings, unzipped and even gave it a good shake before he was done. Guy doesn't give a crap. Story 19. I work at a construction company doing accounting. These are things I've seen thanks to my boss. Wore his daughter's jeans to work, wore mismatched flip-flops to work. I went into his office and there was a huge red liquid stain on the carpet behind his desk, approximately 3 feet by 2 feet with smaller patches around it. He'd quit taking his pressure meds because his pressure was good. This caused a week-long nosebleed that required several trips to the ER, clothing covered in red liquid, and a tube running from behind his ear into his nose to keep from dripping. There was also mess all over the kitchen, but one of my coworkers cleaned that up before I came in. He asked me to help him with his computer. He forgot to close the corn site. A pair of red high-heeled knee-high vinyl boots in the storage closet. I'm the only woman who works there, and they weren't mine. Retch on his shirt, he retched on himself in the car on the way to work. My boss is infamous. People ask for stories about him. It's great. Story 20. I walked into my manager's office. Door was open, like usual, and didn't see her, which was odd. My office was right across the hall and I hadn't seen her leave. I assumed I missed her leaving, and as I'm about to turn and walk out, I saw her foot sticking out from under her desk. I was confused, said her name and got no response, walked around her desk and she's balled up taking a nap. I didn't know what to do, so I just walked out. Another time I was returning to my office and glanced in the window next to her door that she usually never closed and saw her with her foot propped up on her desk clipping her toenails. Gross, but whatever. At least her door was closed. However, she saw me walk by and called me in. Do you think she stopped clipping her toenails? The answer is no. I have so many absurd stories about this woman. Story 21. So while I was working as a pool technician at my college's pool, I was basically a glorified janitor, we found that someone had started whizzing directly onto the toilet paper rolls in one of the men's bathrooms. This was frustrating and one of my fellow techs had to clean it up, which made me upset because he was a super nice guy and didn't deserve that. This continued for a while and eventually it came up on my shift and I realized that I was unwilling to do this again. We obviously weren't legally allowed to have cameras inside the bathrooms, but we did have them outside so we could see who went in and out of the bathrooms, and the times it happened were a pretty quiet time of day. So I set up a watch for people to check that bathroom every half hour or so we could narrow down the suspect list until we found him. I came into work the next day and we have this little logbook that we keep so people can write maintenance, cleaning, or administrative stuff in, so we could keep the staff informed about everything, and when I came in, someone had just written, "We got him." Turns out that some little kid from one of the swim programs had been going up there and whizzing on the toilet paper and spitting on the mirrors, didn't even realize those two things were from the same person because he wanted his friends to think he was quote-unquote funny. His coach didn't. He made the kid apologize in front of the whole staff and then made him help the tech clean up the whiz-soaked toilet paper roll. Then the next day, he came back with his mother in tow, who was absolutely mortified by this. She made him apologize in front of the staff again, forced him to write an apology note which was photocopied and put into the mailbox of every employee, and then, just to put the cherry on top, she bought cookies for the staff with money from his college fund. Obviously, it was just a drop in the bucket at that, but it was the thought that counted. Oh, and we nicknamed this kid before we caught him, sort of a code word so we knew who we were talking about, the Phantom Whizzer. Alright, if you're enjoying the video too, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 22. I work in a place where victims of crime often have to come personally to speak with employees, and most of these victims are very, very poor and can't take care of themselves. Anyway, the strangest thing I've seen here is once a colleague and I were speaking with an older woman who was sitting in the lobby and she smelled. Oh gosh, she smelled so bad, like farm animals and poop. Anyway, we were doing our best to talk to her, and when we were done, she got up to leave and we saw in the chair this weird pile of black sand. We didn't think much of it while we were walking her out and just thought we'd clean the chair later when she was gone. So we walk over to the chair and take a look at this black sand, and it was moving. It was kind of neat to look at, moving all on its own at first, so we lean our heads in closer to get a better look. And it wasn't sand, it was thousands of tiny insects which we later found out were bedbugs. The lobby was instantly quarantined. Story 23. I don't know if caught is the right word since it was me, but I worked at my mom's company as a summer job for a summer in college. There was a single bathroom, just a toilet bowl and sink, and you could lock the door, no stalls. I went in and laid the most massive crap you've ever seen. It went from down the hole to touching the front of the bowl. I was pretty proud, and since they were unisex bathrooms and nobody would know it was me, I left it to be admired and threw my TP in the trash so as to leave an unobstructed view. I went into my mom's office and told her to check it out. She was disgusted and told me I needed to go flush it, but I refused. 10 minutes later, there's a big commotion going around the bathroom. Everyone in the office, about 10 people, are crowded around the bathroom admiring my crap, and they can't believe this came out of someone. Of course, only my mom and know who was behind it. Story 24. Came into the office early and thought I'd take advantage of the opportunity to be the first one to wreck the men's room for the day. As soon as I opened the door, I realized someone had already done so, and to great putrid effect. But whatever, my roommate in college was a heavy drinker with Crohn's disease, so I can tolerate crap stink. Plus, I gotta go, so I continue on. Our work restrooms are laid out airport style, bank of sinks, followed by a bank of urinals and stalls. As I'm walking past the sinks, I hear water running, stop mid-stride, look left, and hear a gasp. I look over to see my female coworker one leg up on the counter shaving her thing, staring at me like a deer in the headlights. I too was frozen in place, staring awkwardly at the early morning men's room poop culprit who'd I had a crush on for the better part of a year, shaving herself in a public restroom at work. I then chuckled, waved, and proceeded to the stalls. It's been over a month and she still won't look at me, though I've not told a soul. Story 25. Used to work in a food factory in R&D. I had to supervise many plant workers when we would do first-time production runs. We had showers on the premise because the food flavoring we made stunk like crazy. Anyway, we were all going out for a drink after the shift and couldn't find one of the guys, so two of us went into the shower room to check if he was there. We heard one of the showers still on behind its curtain. One of his coworkers looks at me and says, "Watch this." He flings open the curtain, and before he got the word "boo" out, we saw this employee was halfway through shaving his thing in the shower. Needless to say, we noped the heck out of there. We had fun asking him the next few days if he was itchy yet. Plus, the next week, our plant manager had to give us a somewhat delicate speech to all the workers about what is acceptable and what is not in the showers. Only us three knew what he was talking about and could barely keep from busting out laughing. Story 26. I worked in a hotel as a front desk agent, and we had a new accountant who had moved to the area to work at the company. They let him stay in the hotel for a few months while he looked for a place to live. He was taking a sweet time to find a place. Eventually, after 2 to 3 months, the hotel cut him off since it was busy season and the hotel needed the room available. One day, I was in the back office and heard something odd. The engineering guy was back there with me, and he unlocked the accounting office. We see our accountant shuffling under his desk in the dark. He was sleeping under his desk. I like to think he was just sleeping because he was really weird and I'd hate to think anything else was going on, and he tried to be all cool about it. That one and my night auditor, words can't describe how much I hated this woman. She was fat as all hell and would come into work late every night, I'm talking hours, and she always had fast food. One time I counted 13, 14 soft tacos from Taco Bell in the bag she left in there. She had an awful personality too, which didn't provide any redemption for how fat and disgusting she was. She would pump milk at our supervisor's desk when she had her baby, leaving traces of milk everywhere. When she was pregnant, she would get offended if people didn't know she was pregnant due to her pre-pregnancy large size. Story 27. I was repairing a forklift at a customer's location inside a warehouse. Near my work area was a window looking out towards another warehouse with a road between them for truck entrance. It was a gloomy day, but I looked out the window and saw a guy outside by the other warehouse. He looked like he was on the phone and having a smoke. I carried on working. I looked again and realized he was engaging in a very inappropriate public display. I was shocked, thinking, holy crap, this is freaking weird. I ran back over to my forklift and was freaking out mentally. I was laughing and thinking, who could I tell about this? I called dispatch and tell her what's up. As I'm talking to her, I look out the window again. This dude has his face plastered against the window, smiling at me. He waves at me. I'm telling dispatch, and she can't believe this. She's laughing too. I hang up, I look away. I can't give this dude any satisfaction. He starts to play hide and seek. He moves to the side and then back into the window, smiling. He does this 3 or 4 times and disappears. Finally, one of the warehouse maintenance guys shows up and asks how things are going. I tell him what just happened. He says he has heard of this guy but never saw him before. He takes off in the golf cart and drives around the property, doesn't see a thing. Freakiest crap I've seen in real life. Story 28. I worked in a shop that made sheet glass products like mirrors and tabletops. There was a guy that had been working there for a really long time before I had started. He was nice but a bit awkward. We all knew he wasn't the sharpest tool in the toolbox, but he worked hard and was easy to get along with. He had a habit of wearing Costco-style sweatpants every day and a white t-shirt, which wasn't that odd. But when you work in a machine shop with no AC in Florida during the summer, you can see why sweatpants might not be the best idea. One particularly hot day, me and a couple of coworkers were standing together talking when I noticed him across the shop reaching into his sweats to scratch. I mean, he was really digging in there. So I pointed out to the guys I was talking to and they all moaned and discuss. I immediately make a bet with my coworkers that he would smell his hand when he was done. Once again, they moan and discuss and claim that he couldn't possibly do such a thing. So they take me up on the bet, assured of their victory. Surely the easiest $40 I have ever made. Story 29. I used to work at the MOD post office in my hometown barracks with these 2 guys. One was a pain in the neck named Chris, and one was a little old dude who looked like a little, Penfold without the glasses. Anyway, Penfold would love pulling pranks on Chris. He used to stuff rubbish in his pants and ping rubber bands at him all the time because he didn't like Chris, and to be honest, neither did I. He always called me D'Artagnan, but pronounced it Dogtanian. Anyway, Penfold was a lovely little man, but he had a maniacal laugh. One day I caught him in Chris's locker putting bread crusts and cigarette butts in his jacket pockets and hiding Chris's lunch. We both laughed and I joined in stuffing paper in the pockets and rubber bands. I freaking hated that job because I had to get up at 5 a.m., but I still wonder some days what new pranks that tricksy little hobbit is up to. Story 30. I worked at a car wash when I was 19. Every other person there was Guatemalan, but me, I was the only white kid. Some of the nicest people I've ever met. With the language barrier came some times where they would be explaining things that I couldn't quite understand, so they'd have to show me or pass it to a guy that spoke English better. Anyway, I show up one morning early, and one of the guys, Freddie, all gold teeth, hilarious as well, was standing in the middle of the car wash tunnel with a power washer. washing a pair of wooden high-heeled shoes, like literal women's shoes, just standing there with a power washer, drowning them with the highest pressure possible. When we made eye contact, he started to get angry and shout at me. This time, he wasn't kidding at all. When I asked the other guys what the purpose was, they were as confused as I was. Story 31. This was a few years back. I was working in retail as a supervisor. We had a nice couch in our break room. One day, there was an issue with the schedule where two managers were accidentally scheduled to open. So I came in at my usual time and headed to the break room to put my lunch in the fridge. I opened the door to find one of our employees and the other manager completely unclothed and intimate on the couch. The manager, who was the one involved, told me I could go home for the day. Our top manager was out of the country, so I waited for the next day. I was still new to the job market, so I didn't know about HR reporting. When I went in, I saw the girl run out of the manager's office crying and run out the door. Apparently, they both got fired because they were caught by security cameras just a few days earlier, but the company had to go through the legal aspects before they could act on anything. It's so sad thinking about how they were going to tell their spouses they got fired. The weirdest thing, though, was that the girl was always really close to the manager she was seeing and said he was like a father to her, so yuck. And of course, they did it on our nice, comfy couch, which ended up being thrown out the next day. Story 32. I work for a medical facility. At this time, we were not open to patients, just staff. While someone who was in at the site consistently decided to allow some guy from outside to use our restroom. After 15 minutes, he hadn't come out yet. Then we notice the light is off, so we start knocking. No answer. The door is locked. We finally call the cops because the dude is unresponsive. It's been about 45 minutes and he's locked in the room with the lights off. We weren't in a pretty bad area where we had a lot of homeless people and substance users who hung around the building. Cops show up, they get the door unlocked, but it was a struggle because he was passed out up against the door. He had to be walked out. He was intoxicated as hell at 10 a.m. The same week, we had to break up a fight between 3 women in the parking lot. The only office that was open was a Planned Parenthood. I wonder what happened there. And coworker related, we had a girl who would take extremely long bathroom breaks every hour. Well, whatever, maybe she had a medical issue, but I don't think so. Every time she went in there, you could hear her dump her whole purse out and then she would start talking to herself. She also liked to talk about God the Mother and eventually cornered me in the break room and tried showing me Bible verses and telling me about God the Mother. She was eventually fired for A, taking weirdly long bathroom breaks, and B, trying to push religion on everyone. I'm convinced she was a witch or something though. She took a random day off for religious reasons, and when I looked it up, the only religion that was observing anything on that day was Wicca. She was fun. Story 33. I got called down to the production floor at an old company. I was IT and I was asked to see if there was any damage to the computer by this wall that had water rushing out of it. I quickly shut it down, unplugged and moved everything before any damage occurred. On the other side of the wall was a bathroom with a destroyed toilet. It was one of those high-pressure ones that bolt to the wall and it was sitting on the floor. The pipe was pouring water into the wall and out through any small hole it could. The site security guy and I pulled the security footage and caught an awkward, scrawny guy and a huge 300 to 400 pound easily girl sneaking into the bathroom. A few minutes later, they ran out, putting their clothing back on. With HR present, we questioned the guy and all he said was, "Look at me. I get it where and when I can because I don't usually get it." We asked him how and he said that he sat on the toilet and she rode him and it broke the toilet off the wall. Poor guy just got laid and fired in the same day. The girl never came back to work. Story 34. I had received an after-hours call from someone that co-located with us and was having problems with one of their arrays. It was on and responding to ping but wasn't serving data nor were they able to manage it. So I threw on a shirt and some sandals and drove the 20 or so minutes into the DC. I badged/bioscanned into the building, then the DC itself. I opened the door and walked in. And there were at least 20 people in various states of undress and bondage gear that suddenly looked very surprised to see me. I kind of startled and started reaching for my phone to call the cops, and the CEO came over and told me to go on about whatever it is you need to do. He was really nice to me after that, lunches and beer and stuff. Story 35. A Muslim coworker frequently takes time in his day to find a spot in the warehouse and pray. The first time I saw him doing it, I had no idea what the hell he was doing. Then I figured it out. Apparently, he does it often. I have only seen him doing it once, though. Now, don't get me wrong, him being Muslim doesn't bother me. A person's religion is their own business. He can pray if he wants. But when doing it at work, he breaks so many rules and creates health hazards. No one will say anything to him, though, because they don't want him to get offended. He also washes his feet in the cubicle at work. I don't know what water he actually uses. I hope it's not the toilet water. Again, to each their own. What bothers me, though, is that he doesn't clean up after himself. He leaves all the tissues he uses to dry his feet on the floor around the toilet bowl. Story 36. Honestly, I don't know what she was doing. She was cooking something in the microwave, which is next to everyone's desks. All of a sudden, an intense smell of garbage wafts over. I mean, like literal garbage. It had a tang of rotting pineapple, and I could almost taste the garbage juice from the bottom of the bag. She, on the other hand, looked ready to eat lunch. We asked later her friend on IM what the smell was, hoping she would know. She blamed a different coworker. So we asked him, and it turns out he hasn't even been around the office today. So this girl's department helped cover up some weird trash meal that left a stench that didn't air out for hours. Story 37. My first job out of college as an intern in a multinational company. A colleague and I were working on a project and we were eager to learn and impress our bosses. One night around midnight, we decided to find a conference room to prepare for a presentation. We worked on the 4th floor and the 2nd floor was always empty during the night, so we decided to go find a room on the 2nd floor so that we could work in peace. We get to the 2nd floor, I spot a room, and when I open the door, I see a girl lying on the table close to the edge and a guy in an intimate situation with her. As soon as I opened the door, the girl covered her face and the guy stopped and gave me a "do you mind" stare. After a few awkward seconds, I said sorry, shut the door, and left. I never found out who the girl was, even though I had some idea, but I ran into the dude a few times and he was always nonchalant and didn't give a crap. Story 38. I work with a large number of graphic artists. One worked off-site but would come in on occasion. I got stuck in the elevator with him once. He liked to brag how, in his off time, he would photograph Fashion Week in NYC. He was the nerdiest of nerds and not in a fun, cool way, more like a creepy way. Yeah. Then after telling me he did that, he kept saying how he wanted to get married so a woman would make him dinner every night. The elevator door finally opened and I left with, "Good luck with that." I felt like taking a shower after that. Ugh. Story 39. As a security guard, I've seen a lot of bored people, to say the least. I got called in the middle of the night while I was asleep to go help out some guy at some graveyard shift. It really didn't make any sense to me, but long story short, they wanted 2 guards there that night. Over time, I guess I didn't mind too bad. So anyway, I get to this posting and I can't find this guy anywhere. I'm like, seriously, where the heck is he? I called my boss, no answer. Crap, had gone back to bed, I guess. So I'm looking around this vast complex and finally I'm about to give up when I see some boxes move on their own in part of this warehouse. I kind of freak out a little. I come around the corner and there this guard is, dressed up as a cardboard transformer out of trash boxes. And while that was funny, it was the fact that he had actually made a plane/robot transformer outfit like Starscream, and he was right in the process of apparently changing back into a plane when he saw me. I pretended it never happened. I'm not sure if the guy was ashamed or embarrassed or what. I kind of was, hey, I've seen other weirder stuff, just to make him feel better. But I was lying. Also, the guy was like 50 years old, so it was even weirder. Story 40. I used to work at a warehouse with about 40 other guys. Upper management complained that the male toilets weren't being flushed after number 2s were being done each lunch hour. They posted a note that called the individual the Phantom Pooper and asked them to stop immediately. And this went on for months. No one knew who this phantom was and why they were leaving their waste in the toilet each lunch without flushing. Finally, after 6 months, now dubbed the Phantom Crapper, I caught the culprit. I walked into the toilets to see the second in charge walk out. I reported him and they fired him shortly after on other related matters. I rest easy at night knowing the true identity of the poo pirate. Well, if you liked any of these stories, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. I'll catch you in that video.